Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bold Business Podcast. In the studio today, we have our fabulous Nicola. Yes, we are welcoming Gemini season together, and we can't wait to give you all of the cosmic tea. If you don't know Nicola, she's fantastic, incredible, inspiring, wonderful woman. She is a photographer, she is a cosmic consultant, she's a radiance coach, and she is also our reader for Cosmic Queen. So if you have a birthday coming up in Gemini or someone you want to gift a reading, or maybe you're just ready for some cosmic insight and direction in your life, make sure you go and book a reading with Nicola. You can do just astrology, just human design, or a combination. So, of course, the links will be in the show notes. Okay, so we are coming together today to talk about Gemini. How excited are you, Nicola, for this new season coming up?
Excited for Gemini. I mean, Taurus is my month because it's my birthday and everything.
Yes.
So that's always like my favorite. But there's something about Gemini this year, I feel that is there. It's such a good energy for us all because as we'll be exploring, Gemini, I think, embodies these qualities that we can all do more of, like with more of right now. Like it is helping us be more flexible, adaptable, and embracing change, which is the big theme the moment for this year. So
Yes.
I think, yeah, leaning into this Gemini energy can be very supportive for everybody right now as we navigate change as a collective.
I love it. Oh my God, thank you for saying that. I think, it's really interesting just looking at where we are in the year, we started off the year with a bunch of retrogrades. We had a March Madness, season of eclipses, Mercury and Venus retrograde at the same time in Aries and Pisces. And then we moved into this kind of interesting combination of Taurus, grounding, stability, focusing on money and body and all these things, while having the cosmic fast lane with no retrogrades. And so that was kind of an interesting combo where we were able to start to integrate some of the eclipse realizations, and the puzzle pieces have started to fall more into place where they were shaken up in February and March. So now we hit Gemini. And now it's this, like, as you say, this moment of like change and flexibility and being like, okay, so now we've taken a breath. Where are we going next? What ideas do we have for our next steps? What are we ready to embrace? I always feel that, this is the end of springtime, right? In the Northern Hemisphere, Gemini represents the end of spring, and starting to move into summer. It's a transitional kind of season. And I always feel like Gemini starts to bring this freshness. We were in the center of spring in Taurus, and now we're transitioning and we're getting ready for the fullness of summer. I love it. So tell us a little bit more about like the things that Gemini represents. Maybe we could talk about the
Mhm.
planet that rules it. Yeah.
Mhm.
What's the vibe
Yeah.
with Gemini?
I think what feels so nice about Gemini is it does bring the sense of levity and playfulness to it. It's an air sign, so that is like that sense of like, yeah, it's all about the mind. It's about communication, ideas, all these, we want to be connecting in Gemini season. And I think that's what feels a little bit lighter.
Mhm.
I always think of Geminis as like these social butterflies. And it's very much to do with this, this air element, this connection with the mind. I mean, Mercury is the resonant planet. And I don't think we can, Mercury is so much about like it is the messenger of the gods. It's about alchemy. So when we're talking about transformation, like this
Mhm.
is what that planet represents. I think Mercury is also super fascinating because I hope I'm going to say this word right, but it's if you think about the mythology around Mercury, it's a psychopomp. It is the god that can go between the heavens and the underworld. It has this ability to shapeshift and go, in all these different realms, the realms of the shadows and the realms of the light. And I
Yes.
think it's so beautiful because one of the things that I find the most fascinating about this sign is how Gemini really represents duality. It's like the twins, it's the different sides, the light and the dark, the feminine and the masculine. It's everything. It's and both. It's not either or.
Hmm.
And that is really good medicine for us right now because we're in a time that's so polarized where we're not accepting the duality. And even in our lives, we're not necessarily accepting the duality, which is where we meet a lot of resistance.
Hmm.
And if we can take this Gemini medicine of embracing duality, accepting differences, I think, we could bring a lot more ease into our lives.
You said it. That's exactly it. I love this message for us. You're right. I think it's very much something that we need right now. How can we, walk with that duality? How can we embrace both, the shadow and the light, all of these things? And there's so much, yes, there's so much right now where people are kind of like digging in, right? We're digging in in one position. Like, oh, it's only this, it's only that, it's all good, it's all bad. And I think we're losing some of the ability to recognize the nuance or recognize good can come from difficult things, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about Gemini, for Gemini, variety is the spice of life.
Yes.
So, and I think at the moment, people in general are tending to want to surround themselves with people like them. And I'm
Hmm.
like, where's the fun in that,
Hmm.
really? If I think a really good practice for us in general is to listen to people with different thoughts and opinions and not feel the need that we need to either agree with them or defend how we feel because we should never be putting ourselves on a pedestal thinking that we are right or
Hmm.
we know
Hmm.
it all. I think there's so much we can learn from just hearing different perspectives. And Gemini is like the absolute master at embracing different
Hmm.
perspectives.
Wasn't it, is it not Orson Welles, Oscar Wilde, two OWs, Oscar Wilde, who said something along the lines of like, you know, the wise person is the person who like realizes how much they don't know, whereas the fool is the person who thinks they know it all. I'm totally paraphrasing that, but I think that Gemini, that is absolutely a Gemini thing to say is that like, well, we can't possibly know it all, but isn't it great to be curious? Isn't it
Mm.
great to ask questions? Isn't it great to explore and to find out? And I think, for all of us, here listening or watching, if you are, Gemini season is a great time to be more curious. What is it that you'd like to be more curious about? What is it that maybe have been really entrenched on, maybe in the way that you run your business, maybe in the way that you are engaging in your friendships or your relationships? How can you be more curious? How can you ask more questions? Because, the right question can open up just worlds of possibility for us, right? There's so many things, like just thinking off the top of my head, there's so many things in my business where I was just sure that something wasn't for me. I remember thinking about things like funnels and passive products and things like that. And I was like, oh, that will never be for me because I just love doing things live. And then there came a point, especially, having so much pressure in the personal life and, having a child and needing, other places where my energy needed to go, where I was like, you know what would be great if I had more passive income. So, what would be great right now if I didn't need to show up when I'm, need to put my energy elsewhere in my life. And I love being live. I always will, but it doesn't need to be, as you said, either or. It can be both and. And so, in business, sometimes we forget to be curious. Sometimes we're just like, well, this is what's always worked for me. I've done several readings lately with people, or I should say, business strategy sessions, not really readings, but where they've said, oh, I've been in my business for 6 years. Actually, yeah, two people said the same thing. I've been in business for 6 years and suddenly it's not growing like it used to. Right. And okay, perfect season to be thinking about this because what always worked will not always work. Like we have to evolve. Like that's the nature. I believe that's the nature of humanity is like we're always evolving, always growing, always changing. And so our businesses, our relationships, even the relationship with ourself needs to as well. So like, thank you for that reminder. That's such a juicy one for Gemini.
But I love that so much. Like that focus on curiosity that you just brought forward is so lovely. It's like, are we allowing ourselves to like follow the rabbit hole? Like,
Yes.
follow the breadcrumbs, go and explore, just free fall down the rabbit hole and see what comes.
Yeah.
That is such absolute freedom. And I think we do, again, box ourselves in, especially when we've made statements or things, and we don't allow ourselves to change our mind.
Hmm.
I think this is again really good inspiration and advice from Gemini this season is give yourself permission to change your mind. Like give yourself, that is how we evolve and grow. We don't have to stay stuck on a little corner that we've painted ourselves into
Into.
and give other people permission to change their mind. And, be like, I once thought this and now I feel that, and that's totally
And
okay.
that's totally okay. Exactly. I think those of us who have the open head center and the open ajna in human design, that might be a little easier for us. But I
Mm,
think everyone kind of needs to tap into that sense of open-mindedness and, wondering and musing and possibilities and things as well. I think it's a healthy way to be for sure.
yeah. And an easier way to get to allow yourself to do that is when you are putting your stake in the ground for something, is that doesn't mean that everything else becomes wrong. It's
Yeah.
we vilify the things that we are not choosing, that we make it harder for ourselves to then change our mind
Hmm.
because we were tearing something else down a second ago. And and now maybe, we're seeing a new perspective.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
harder
Exactly.
to admit that.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true. Oh, absolutely. I What do you think? I would love to know your thoughts about, one of the kind of challenging sides, we could say shadow sides,
Mhm.
whatever that people make fun of with Gemini is they say that Geminis are two-faced. And I mean, my take on this is that's incorrect. I think that the open-mindedness and the willingness to change the mind is actually a sign of wisdom, not of duplicity. But I love how you reminded us that like when you go the Gemini is about kind of being comfortable with all sides. It's like that airyest air sign, mutable air energy. So in the mythology, it's comfortable in heaven, comfortable in the underworld, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, what any other thoughts about that, about the kind of two-faced thing that keeps coming up?
I think this is what I like about looking into astrology because it gives us so much more understanding for each
Yes,
other.
yes.
Because immediately when you don't understand something, you tell a story. You're like that, ability to, see all the sides that we see it as duplicitous, like you
Right.
said. But
Hmm.
when you understand that actually, like this is a natural proclivity for some people to want to like try all the things and see all the sides and explore all the ideas, that there's not necessarily like malintent.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and again, we're maybe holding ourselves to having to pick a spot or a side,
Mhm.
rather than seeing Gemini potentially as the social butterfly who does maybe love to play all the sides, but
Yep.
it makes people like that wonderful connectors.
Yes.
And maybe, you've got to know, like, you've got to see people's gifts rather than focusing on everybody has strengths. And I think Gemini's strength is being maybe that social connector for you.
Hmm.
And maybe, you don't want to maybe spill out your deepest, darkest secrets um, to them.
Are you talking about the accusation of being a gossip that comes with Gemini?
You
Yeah.
need to be a little bit,
Hmm.
self-aware
Hmm.
about, the conversations you have. But I think it's like, yeah, like if you want to maybe be social, connect, be inspired, be willing to like, have different ideas brought forward, then Gemini is the place to be.
Yes.
Um,
I love
yeah,
that.
what do you think about that whole?
Oh,
playing both sides card.
yeah, I think yeah, I do think it's kind of a fundamental misunderstanding
Mhm.
of, like you said, of the curiosity and the openness and the willingness to be flexible. Some people don't want you to be flexible. They want you to stay the same. They want you to be exactly as you've always been. They don't want you to change your mind, and they want you to agree with them. And so, so yeah, I do think that there is a really challenging side to having a lot of Gemini energy in your chart. So if you have any of the personal planets, like for we'll talk about this in a minute where Gemini is in our charts, but if you have maybe Gemini rising, if you have a Gemini moon, sun, Venus, Mars, or Mercury, I would say one of the challenges that can come up is having too many ideas and not
Mm.
knowing which one is right for you. So,
Yeah.
this kind of idea of like too many ideas. There's also, I want to acknowledge because I believe it's either this week or next week. I should have looked it up, but Mental Health Week is upon us, Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK. And, you know, being able to see, the heaven and the underworld of life can be very difficult for some people as well, well, for all people, because it's like we see what it could be, we see the possibilities, and then we see the darkness, the difficulties, and all that as well. So people who have a very busy mind and who are always taking in life and taking in the world and like working to understand stuff, that can also be really hard to kind of live in a world where there is a lot of duality, right? And so I think we kind of also, I would say, as we're talking about the lightness of Gemini, should also acknowledge that because Gemini is a very mind-centered sign. And so taking care, if you have really strong Gemini placements of your mind, of how your mind works, of what your mind is fixating on or thinking about, and taking care of your mental health is just so, 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 so paramount. And I think especially for people who have a lot of air energy.
100%. I feel like one of the low expressions of Gemini can look like mental overstimulation,
Yes.
which results in anxiety or distraction. Like you just spread your energy in so many different ways. You just, you're always on a device, looking at this, reading that, da 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 da. I think the antidote to that is to give yourself space where you're not on a device, where you're not around technology, where you're just being, where you are, explore meditation, give yourself a chance to quiet the mind or just be mindful. Like a lot of people, I think, there's a lot of resistance towards meditation, but it's like, can you sit down, have a cup of tea, and again, maybe this is maybe more tourist medicine, but just, get back into
No,
the
no,
senses.
I agree. No, no, I agree. I always think of if you're overstimulated in one element, use the opposite element. So the way I see it is the opposite of air is earth because it's
Yeah.
ground, and the opposite of fire is water. So if you have a lot of air energy, I think you're right, Taurus medicine. Do the thing where you're actually still, where you're pushing your mind, or I should say, inviting your mind to stillness. And yeah, oh my gosh, meditation has been massive for me, and I have so much air in my chart. And it's hard at first, but the rewards are just massive for people who have a lot of air energy to be
Yeah.
still. Hmm.
I think so. And I think,
Yeah.
there's a couple of other things you could bring in. There's also like breath work. I mean, that's
Yes.
perfect for air signs. Like breath work can really help us again to can do that body connection and regulate the nervous system, which I think is key with Gemini, is like that nervous system regulation. So doing a nice breathwork practice, as simple as like breathing in and out to, 4 counts. I just
Yes, I love the 4 count one.
so
Yes.
simple, and you can even like do a mantra just to keep the mind busy, keeps the mind happy. It's like giving it a little chew toy. So I
Yes.
quite like, if you say let on the inhale and then you say go on the exhale, and you're just sitting there
Oh,
letting go,
wow.
and just give yourself that space, like just a few minutes, like put like a minute of that, I think would be life changing if
Yes.
you could remember to do that like regularly.
Yes.
And also, I think solo time, because especially a lot of Gemini energy, there's probably like a massive pull to be connecting and socializing and all these commitments that are social. And are you actually even giving yourself space to just be alone? Yes, I
Yes.
think that's sometimes a big one.
Yes. And you know what's funny is we should talk about where Gemini is in our charts. I'll go first. So Gemini is my moon and it's my IC. So it's the opposite of my anyone who has a Sagittarius midheaven, you have a Gemini IC. And that's, you know, what you need in order to be feeling stable and secure in your home and family life. And it's really interesting, like with Gemini energy, you know, even when you're alone, you're not alone. You have all these like voices in your head. You have all these, you have all this like, you know, these thoughts spinning around. You have all these like, you could say, like I won't say multiple personalities, but you can see all these sides of things and you can actually have conversations with yourself. And the most important relationship is the one with yourself. And I think it's so important to remember that for some people who have Gemini is like, yeah, even self-talk, like you said, being alone, talking to yourself can be so healing. I have yeah, Gemini moon, and I just would never talk to people about my feelings, but I would write poetry and I would write songs. I'm thinking of like when I was really young. And I would, you know, journal. And that helped me get it out because it's like I'm talking to myself or I'm talking to the universe. And then, of course, the conversations with, you know, live breathing people are also very important. But communication, that's the central one of the central themes of Gemini as well. So that's, you know, if you've got a strong Gemini in the personal planets, then definitely focus on how can you communicate and express yourself more. Where do you have Gemini?
I have my Venus in Gemini. So if you just even think about like my one of my dominant love languages is words of affirmation.
Of course, of course. Me too.
So, I think just, yeah, speaking to yourself, communicating with yourself again, first and foremost. I think a really nice practice for this time is like, how are you speaking to yourself? Are you speaking to yourself in a loving way? So mirror work could be really beautiful.
Yes.
Speaking I love you to yourself with eye contact
Hmm.
in that primary relationship, so key. It will transform your relationship with everybody else if you do
Yes.
this for yourself.
Yes.
And
My mirror meditations are my favorite ones I've ever made. Like there's so I have one in I think I have one or two in the constellation community and one in Rising Star. I agree. It's just the mirror work, eye contact, speaking out loud. Oh, it's
Mhm.
amazing. Mm.
and remember, like we're talking about again, Gemini relating to like Mercury and Hermes, it's like magic, and words are magic. And the words that we speak, just being like extra mindful of like what words are you choosing to say, it can really shift things.
Mhm.
It's the difference between, expansion and contraction. A word can
Yes, yes.
transform everything.
Oh, I love that. This is like exciting me because I was just having a Voxer conversation with one of my clients this morning. Shout out to you, Queen. And we are talking about money, and I was talking about how, you know, the philosophy of selling and the mindset around selling, and I was helping her to reframe like the feeling about that or the thought about that. And so from going from the word greedy, which is often a word that people have in their minds when they're thinking about selling or receiving money in their business or something like that, to the word generosity. Like, oh my gosh, just the word changes the whole way you see the scenario, your role in it, changes how you feel about what's happening. And if you can just, yeah, reframe with words, I love that so much. So, yeah, we're all about generosity around here, generosity to yourself, generosity to your community and your clients. Like, yeah, it's a great reframe.
That is a beautiful reframe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love it. So, okay, so you have Gemini Venus, I have Gemini Moon. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. I want to make a mention of Gemini Midheaven though, because of course we talk about the Midheaven a lot here at Cosmic Queen, and this is the Bold Business podcast, so we should talk some business.
Hmm.
Gemini Midheaven is just such an interesting position. Like, it's the only one of all of my archetypes, the 12 different zodiac signs for the midheaven. By the way, if you're listening, new listener to the podcast, and you don't have the ebook on that, make sure you go and download that. The link is everywhere on social media. But it's the only archetype that where people have a resistance to it. when I tell them about it. Every other archetype, people are like, yep, I can see that. Scorpio, the strategist. I can see Sagittarius, the guide. I can see Taurus, the guardian. But when we get to Gemini, it's the influencer. And what's so interesting is that it's so true. Like when I start describing it, they're like, oh, yeah, my friends absolutely see that in me. And people do tell me that. They have this natural influence. If you are listening and you have a Gemini midheaven, you have a natural influence. You have this natural power of persuasion. What you're excited about, what you're interested in, what you recommend, people eat it up. They're like ready for the recommendations from you. They want to know what you're listening to, what you're eating, who you're following, like what you're watching. Like they want to know. And you are a natural influencer, but for some reason, Gemini midheavens always have this resistance to that. And it's like they don't see these things as being valuable. They don't see these skills as being marketable. They don't see these things as being like a legitimate gift or legitimate job. And I think there's a problem with that because, influencers, capital I influencers in the world are incredibly powerful and incredibly valuable for the brands they work for the ideas that they can get across, for the power that they have. And for us to kind of downplay that and act like that's not real or that's not important, I think is an issue. But I feel like this is a generational thing. I don't know. I know I'm going on a tangent here, but I feel like this is a generational thing. I feel like there's this, oh, the real job is a doctor or a lawyer, right? Like, and social media, that's not a real job. Social media, influencing people, being a communicator, that's not real. That's more just like artsy fartsy. That's not a real thing. So I think, this Gemini season, my invitation to you, whether you have a Gemini midheaven or not, is to start to see your voice as powerful, to start to see your voice as valuable, as worthy, as something that can create, like you said, magic in the world by simply speaking the words, writing the words, sharing the words. If you're someone who you have a book in you, listen to the last podcast episode about how, to really start your book. If you're someone who thinks you want to start a podcast, right? Like I've talked about this so much, this podcast is almost in the top 100 in the UK. We're at number 107 in the entrepreneurship category. And we did that, with not necessarily posting every week, with no fancy equipment or mic or editor or anything. You just got to start. You just have to start seeing what you offer and what you have to say as valuable. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That's your message. That's your homework for Gemini season. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Nicola?
I love that. I think it's like we can all, really do some work on acknowledging that we all have influence.
Mhm.
When we show up somewhere, it changes things.
Yes.
When we decide not to go into a room, that changes things. So whether we are present or not present, we're influencing.
Hmm.
So to start taking that a little bit more seriously about, acknowledging the fact that when we are stepping into a room, we have an impact. And
Hmm.
how are we impacting? Being a bit more mindful, a bit more present about how we're showing up. And just remembering that if we don't show up, we're also impacting and having an influence. So I
Hmm.
think this is a really powerful thing for, especially as entrepreneurs, but I think for everybody, like acknowledging like the influence that just our presence or lack thereof has on everything around us.
100%, 100%. I love that. I want to share some of there are two key dates basically that I need everyone to be aware of. I need you to circle this on your calendar in red, that are coming up in Gemini season. So this Gemini season, of course, the sun moves into Gemini on May 20th, and it's going to be there until June 20th. So we have this wonderful month to work with all of this energy and to integrate and to play and to be curious and to use our voice. And then we have two big, what we call in the business, planetary ingresses happening during Gemini season as well that we have to call out. So we have the planet Saturn moving into Aries, and we have the planet Jupiter moving into Cancer. Now, a lot of people have asked me, okay, when are we going to get a break this year? When are we going to have, some good news? And 2025 just isn't really like that kind of year. It's not a chill year. It's not a get back to basics year. It's a ooh, things are changing. We need to change with it. We need to adapt to the craziness as we go along. And it's also a year of letting go of things that are not working, right? It's a 9 numerology year. We're closing things, we're ending things, we're moving things out and making space for the fresh start of the next cycle in 2026. So, but, but, and I should say, I do think that we're going to have a good summer. I know there's some theories out there about, oh my God, politically what's happening in July. But I think that the energy this summer is quite lovely from the astrology perspective because of Jupiter entering Cancer. So we'll get to that in a moment. But first, we have Saturn in Aries. So this is, I wouldn't call this lovely energy, but it's definitely, it's definitely something. So Saturn has been in Pisces for the last like 3 years, right? And it's going to be moving into Aries. Of course, we are going to have a retrograde. So we are going to have what we call the autumn encore. So it's going to retrograde back into Pisces in the autumn. But Saturn is moving into Aries on May 24th. So circle that. Anyone who was born with Saturn in Pisces, that means that your Saturn return is almost done. You're almost done. After the autumn encore, you will be completely finished. And it means that anyone who was born with Saturn in Aries, that means that you are about to start your Saturn return. Deep breaths. So that means, I'm going to give you a little nugget for this. I should probably do a whole other podcast just on this. But a little nugget for kind of what does Saturn in Aries mean? Well, Saturn is the planet of, structure, rules, wisdom, responsibility, authority, and is moving into the sign of, the warrior, the fighter, the person who has a mission, the person who wants to get things done quickly and now and yesterday, right? Who wants to simplify stuff and wants to be very mission oriented. So I think that's really interesting. To me, this heralds a change in the rules, more boundaries, new rules, breaking old rules that don't work anymore, right? Aries is the maverick, it's the rebel, it's the rule breaker. So we're going to break some rules and we're going to make some new ones, right? So we all collectively have an opportunity to tap into that. Okay. So that's the first thing, first moment. Then our next big cosmic moment is June 9th. So Jupiter enters Cancer. I love this. I love this for us. So anyone who has a really strong, Cancer energy in their chart, look at what house you have Cancer in, look at and see if you have any planets in Cancer. They're going to be activated over the next year by Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is always in a sign for a year. So you're only going to experience this, once every 12 years. Having this Jupiter move back into Cancer. So I love this because Cancer is all about nourishment, nurturing. It's about love. It's about, connection. It's about belonging and home and family. And so you're bringing that, Jupiter is helping invite you into deeper belonging, into deeper intimacy, into deeper heart connection in some area of your life. You want to find out where that is in your chart, what that house represents, because that's a really juicy energy that you get to enjoy. If you have Cancer in midheaven, oh my goodness, this is like go time for your career. If you have, I love this. If you have Cancer rising, this is a time for you to be more seen, to really like you're opening this new era of self, of identity, of, your relationship with yourself, of, leadership of self, all of these things. So I'm really looking forward to that. I do think it's going to give this lovely kind of love emphasis, heart-centered emphasis to our summer. So I'm looking forward to it. It's not about da 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 doing like crazy big moves. It's more about anchoring in to love and connectedness.
Mm, so
Good.
good.
I love
So
it.
yeah.
So, okay, so we gave you lots of good stuff. I hope everyone is excited, inspired, motivated for this Gemini season. We've talked about the highs, the lows. We've talked about the gifts. We've talked about how to use this in your business, the invitations from the universe to raise your voice, and a couple of key dates. Is there anything you want to add, Nicola, before we close?
I think the only thing I would add is also a little teaser. We have got massive activation happening in Gemini in July with Uranus changing signs. So if
Ooh, yes,
you pay
yes,
attention
that's right.
now to what house you have Gemini in, I think remember like what Rachel said, this you have influence in this area.
Yes.
So, with Uranus going into Gemini, there's probably going to be some kind of shakeup happening.
Yes. Later
And
in July.
in July. And just remember, like, this is also where you have influence. So you can navigate this. And yeah, I
Definitely.
think there's some really nice things that we can be looking at right now to, yeah.
Definitely. I love that. That's a great reminder. So much good. Wow. That's going to be very interesting. I can't wait for us to talk about that when that comes along, because there's so many theories about what that could mean societally. But here at Cosmic Queen, we always love to, make the cosmic personal. And it's really about how you navigate these things and how you integrate these lessons and these learnings for yourself. So. I love it. Okay, good stuff. So, everyone, with that, I hope you have a brilliant, beautiful, and successful and generous and all the good things Gemini season.